And the South African's economy grew 1.2% in the second quarter compared to the previous 3 months, beating analysts' forecast. However, data released on Tuesday by the South African Statistics Agency showed in unadjusted year-on-year terms, the GDP jumped 19.3% in the second quarter, reflecting a low base last year when the government shut much of the economy during the harsh lockdown to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The agriculture, trade and mining sectors performed well between April and June, whereas manufacturing and construction fared badly. Africa's most industrialized economy has seen an uneven recovery from the pandemic, with some sectors like mining boosted by the bumper commodities prices, by others struggling under the successive COVID-19 infection waves and lockdown restrictions. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa put public works and job creation at the heart of a recovery plan launched last year. But unemployment struck a new record high, above 34% in the second quarter, data showed last month.
We're now being joined by Admire Dube, head of markets at South African Times, for a deeper look at this turn of events. Well, welcome, and should I be saying congratulations to have seen this kind of growth. Nonetheless, not to seem to tag on bad news to this, it seems as though despite the consistent growth, we haven't seen a return to pre-pandemic levels. Does this tell us the extent of the impact of COVID-19 on the economy in South Africa?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the congratulations. The South African economy is not very different from the global economy. It's just been released from the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, even though the growth numbers are not exactly on the year-to-year scale. They're not exactly that big, but considering just the second quarter, yes, we have to acknowledge that it is a rebound, and the economy has really did perform very well in the last quarter, in the numbers released on the 7th of September.
All right, Admire, talk to us about the mining sector. We know it's gradually picking up, but still far from where it used to be. It's really slow in picking up. Talk to us about that particular sector.
Statistics South Africa, on presenting the numbers, showed a sectoral breakdown of the whole country's economic recovery after the pandemic. And the major drivers of that sector were the transport sector, transport and communication, which grew by about 6.9%, as well as the agriculture sector at 6.2%. The mining sector that you referred to actually it performed mediocre. The mining did about 1.9%. No, the trade did about 1.9% and the mining 2.2%, as well as the manufacturing. They didn't do so well, yet these are the major traditional drivers of the economy. So we're noticing that the traditional sections of the economy didn't perform that well as compared to other emerging sectors of the economy of South Africa.
Okay, are we right to say that this could be the calm before the storm, seeing that there's anticipation that the third quarter will reflect some of the protests we saw earlier on in the KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng? Are we likely to see a dip on the back of that?
Well, you are actually hitting the nail on the head there. Even the economists are not exactly as optimistic. They are expecting the third quarter to show the effects of the July riots in South Africa. And some economists are actually coming forward and saying even the numbers themselves are not exactly reflective of what has transpired within the South African economy, because the South African statistics came up with a new rebased method of calculation. Like, for instance, I can tell you that they changed the base year from 2010 and now are using the prices for 2015. And also they've included other sources of information like social media, for instance, which was not being constituted in other sectors. So figures on a piece of paper, they look exceptional, but there is a certain element of risk. How much of that growth is because of the rebasing, and how much of that growth is really from being driven by the fundamentals of the South African economy?
All right, Admire, you said the mining sector performed mediocre, but That's against the backdrop of the fact that the transport and communication sector did very well, 6.9%. Talk to Rose, what was the driver here?
Please say again.
We're talking about contrasting the mining sector to the transport and communication sector that did very well. All right, from the recent figures actually released, 6.9% for the transport and communication sector. What was the major driver here? Briefly.
Obviously, it was the opening up of the economy. People were beginning to go back to our normal way of life, where we have to commute from home to work from outside of the shackles of being confined at home. So naturally, we expect the transport sector to really be the most booming sector, because all of a sudden people can now move more than they were under the severe lockdown restrictions that were implemented by the South African government, and indeed by all other governments around the world. So it's not exactly a surprise that was the sector that was driving the economy, because the effects are almost immediate. The moment the economy is unshackled and opens up, you expect an instantaneous improvement in that number. But on the traditional numbers of mining, that's why I'm saying South Africa's economy has been driven, especially post-World War II, by the mining sector. And we tend as economists to have reservations when that sector is not exactly growing, because we know transport cannot sustain an economy as big as South Africa. So other fundamentals should come into play. And while I'm discussing that, I should also put it across that the finance and other related sectors really did so well, particularly on these numbers of the second quarter, where it contributed about a quarter of the whole South African economy, which is a sign that perhaps maybe the economy itself is evolving away from the extractive industry of mining, and now it's progressing towards what we are seeing in the first world countries, where finance and other industries are the drivers of the economy. So yes, there is a risk, but also there is some positive news on the horizon.
It's good to leave it on that note. We look forward to maybe having you analyze the sustainability of this progress. Thank you, Head of Markets at South African Times, Mr. Dube. Thank you for sharing your insights.